Hi Bible Art Journalers, this is the video number 2 of painting with household items. Hopefully you were able to catch the part 1 video where I demonstrated some backgrounds and several kinds of flowers. If not, I hope you can go back and watch that. I decided I wanted a little more room, so just scraped on a little more background. I'm going to go ahead and use my green here that I was using before. I love the color options with the Target paints, but I don't love that they don't have the squeeze out option. I also feel like they're not quite as smooth on the page, but it's not so drastic a difference that I won't use them. The other thing I could do is I could shape it like into a bundle. Don't forget to add in a second or even third color of green to give yourself some variation. Now I've got my cotton swabs bundled here. You can see I have about 8. You could use fewer, fussing with it a little bit to get it even into more of a flower shape. Just attach it with a little washi so they don't slide around. I want to take off the excess paint. It's a little, oh, didn't dab. So one of the forgiving things, if the bottom layer is dry, you can go ahead and remove the wet paint easily and try again. So I'm being very careful to try and get as much of the excess paint off so that I get actual circles and not a giant blob. So I'm trying to mush the heads a little bit so that they're not so fuzzy, so there's more definition. Yeah, that's better. So let's do a couple over here. And then I'm going to use my toothpick and I'm going to come and give centers to these flowers. And you don't have to do them in all of them. So hopefully this isn't too confusing with 3 backgrounds on the same page, but I'm trying to demonstrate as much variety in as short a period of time as possible. Here, let me flip this over. I think this looks more sky and this looks more foreground. A rough scribble of a tree. get a couple of colors of pinks. So I'm going to do the medium color first. So blossoms on the tree maybe, and then I'll go in with the other end. Of course, this side hasn't been used, so it's going to be more fuzzy. Maybe pick up a little bit of the white. See, I just feel like when they're too fuzzy, then it doesn't give a good stamped image. So almost like pull some of the cotton off. And you just want to make sure you cover up any ends of the branches. And then I can actually take some of this darker purple here that I had for my tree and put a few of those in too. Well, let's go back to this center section. Sorry, I keep flipping it on you, but I don't know why I did this upside down. Maybe because I had just done that hanging flower. So I hadn't done a background on this section, so I'm just going to go ahead and use my baby wipe technique to put in some shadow and just a real light background. Now I'm going to use my toothpick just to scratch in some twine and a little bow, and I'm going to do this yellow as the top of the twine and then the brown as the bottom, so that there's a bit of contrast and a shadow. So the flowers on these, I think we'll just do some simple little arches, like the tops of the flower, looking at the top from the side, and I'll just cluster them in here on our stems. And let's add highlights again with our toothpick and just some white paint. I have a few flowers up at the top here that are just floating out in space, so I'm going to add stems with my toothpick. Okay, let's try those earplugs. I have two ends to work with, so I'm going to start with this fatter end, and it makes some really nice stamped circles. And then the smaller end, you have to be careful not to squish them too much because it is very soft, but getting some nice even circles. So these are our base layer. We want to get them nice and dry before we go to the next layers. So now I'm using the smaller end to put a concentric circle inside my base circle. And it works pretty good on these biggest ones. And I can kind of control the size of the circle by how much pressure I'm putting. But as soon as I tried to go to a little smaller circle with less pressure, it's just not stamping as clear. So I decided to go ahead and just use my Q-tip again for that third layer. And I didn't dry between the second and third layers, and that probably would have been a good idea if I didn't want the colors to mix. I'll get ready and speed this up here, but I got 4 circles, I think, with the large ones and 3 with the smaller. And these are very abstract, crazy colors. I tend to gravitate more towards natural looking flowers, but it was good to stretch. I'm always trying new things for the sake of teaching, and so I like that it kind of pushes my comfort zone. So just a tiny bit of water added into my paint again to get ready to do some splatters. Now I'm going to show you how to do some leaves, just using those same concepts we've been using, which is a medium base color and then a shadow, low light, and a highlight color. And I just dumped way too much paint on my plate, so let me put some of this back. But pretty much these same techniques can be used with any shape to make flowers, any leaf shape to do leaves, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a peach with my leaves. And since we're using those same concepts, I'm just going to go ahead and let the video run and let you watch. So hopefully you noticed that I used more than 3 colors, and 3 is just the minimum that I want you to try when you're just starting out with this to make sure you're getting that shadow and that highlight. But the more you use, that more depth and texture it's going to have. So don't be afraid to keep mixing your colors and adding to your palette so that you have more options. The other thing about the acrylic paints is that they can be pretty opaque, and so they will layer over, and so they're pretty forgiving if you want to cover something up. If you notice I use my finger, that's where I'm trying to add transparency just by thinning out the paint. So I know some of you are wondering, where does the Bible journaling come in? I liked the peaches so much that I just went ahead and cut them out with a little bit of a margin and decided to prepare this page that I'd been reading to add them in right here. My hope is that these first two videos will give you the ideas for different flowers. We love nature stuff in our Bible journaling. Nature and the creation always points back to Creator. And so I'm hoping that the first two videos will give you ideas of what to use. And then I'm hoping to post a video of the pages that I did with these flower techniques. So I'm just repeating a lot of those same things we were doing with the flowers, using the card and the Q-tips to create a abstract background. And I would not have to even put those peaches on top of here. I could just write a verse or something over the top of this. I have a piece of Teflon sheet under my page to protect my other pages. And if you're interested in knowing more about that, it's mentioned in my washi tape mixed media video that I did last month in March 2019. So you can look that up on my channel. So now I'm going to make sure this layer is good and dry. Lift it and even dry from the back of the page. Now you noticed I've managed to get some paint on the other page, and mistakes are great teaching moments. I always keep some of the antique white or off-white paint from our just regular craft acrylics on hand. I have a bottle that always stays in my Bible journaling bag that I'm using here, and it covers mistakes. So even if you write a word wrong, spell a word wrong, and want to correct that, this antique white is very close in color to our Bible pages. So I am going ahead and just blending it out onto the whole page here. When you're doing just a tiny little spot, it will not be very noticeable, but because this page is entirely blank, you can tell that it's just a little bit of a different shade. And so I'm basically just going ahead and prepping that page for later using this. I'm going to use my Art Basics clear gesso to affix my peaches into my Bible. I do have a particular paintbrush that I always use with my gesso, just so that I don't ruin my other paintbrushes. Even washing it out, it does tend to make the paintbrush crunchy, so I just have one that I always use. So after I press it down and smooth it out, I'm going to make sure all the edges are good and coated underneath, and if a little bit gets on top, that's fine, but I don't have to cover this with the gesso in order for it to have a good solid hold on the page. So I decided I didn't really like the black dots and it was too busy, so I just went ahead and covered them up with the same blue background paint that I had used with the card, but just did the specific spots I wanted to cover. And I just kind of dried it as I went with the heat tool. Part of my image is hanging off the page, so I'm just cutting it off here. I decided to use some alpha stickers for part of my title. By the way, toothpicks make a great helper tool with these teeny tiny little letters. I placed my T and the white dot was making it so I couldn't see it. So I went ahead and painted and got it dry and then reaffixed it. I realize your time is precious in watching these videos, but I do like to leave some of the mistakes in and then how I had solutions for them, like checking the lining up of these letters and seeing that they were a little off and just being able to nudge them with my toothpick, and fixing the white spot and the fixing the where I got paint on the other page. Hopefully those things are helpful in the long run to you if you're, especially if you're new to this. And there is a lot of Bible journaling that requires us to sort of embrace imperfection. Art in general, I think, makes us do that. And I think it's why we need to spend time creating and accepting ourselves where we're at and learning and keeping it positive. And so thanks for hanging in there with this video today. For some lettering here on top of my peaches, I'm just using a Uniball Signo impact gel pen. They write fairly well over acrylics. I occasionally have to kind of scribble on a piece of paper if it gets dried out because the acrylics do absorb it. And I'm doing the faux calligraphy technique where I'm just widening all of my downstrokes after just writing with my regular cursive handwriting. And then I just added some little accents here with a fine liner Sharpie. As well as some shadowing on my sticker letters and my handwritten word. Our last flowers are roses, and I'm going to start just by marking out where I'm going to place them by putting a light background color. The ones in the center are going to be pretty round, and the ones near the top are going to be a bit jelly bean shaped, and then the ones on the bottom are going to be bell shaped. And that just helps me remember to keep them pointing in different directions based on how you would be looking at the top of the bunch. I'm going to use my baby wipe technique to fill in the space between them. And this is as simple as we get with greenery, I guess. I mixed up these base coat colors, and then I also mixed up a medium shade for applying first after this base coat, a darkest color for giving my structure, and then a lighter shade to give accent, and then a highlight color. So each flower will get basically 5 applications. Now I'm going to use 3 different medium shade colors again to do the backgrounds of the flowers. And if these roses were all going to be the same color, you could do the base coat all the same. I just thought it would be fun to show you in a couple different colors. Now, this goes very much the same as my simple watercolor tutorial. You're going to start with a little C in the center of the flower, and then you're going to put like a backwards C. Oops, well, how about starting with a dot? Okay, 2 C's. We pulled that one out. All right, kind of facing each other or one inside the other, staggered, and then on the side where sort of the opening is between the two, we will put another larger C, and we're just going to keep layering out like that. Where the opening is, we will, between the two, well, the next layer out will kind of close that. And you can even do some shorter, some longer, and then the C's are going to open up more the further out along the edge you go. Um, so they might actually be not an exact C shape, but they can get even kind of squarish, or um, can be more of a straight line, depending on how you want to change up the petals. So I'm going to go ahead and do that for all of these, and I'm using my darker shade for each of these. So the base coat was the medium, and then the darker shade is going to go next, and then we'll do lighter shades on top of that, and a highlight. Now I'm going to work a lighter color in around those dark structures that I did, and I know we're doing this kind of in steps, but actually the more you vary it, from rose to rose, the better. Some leave the base part showing, some put a lot in, some leave more of the structure dark colors, and do finer lines. There's not a lot of intricacy that can happen when you're painting with uh, a cotton swab, and so I actually kind of think, because you can't control it as much, that it's good. Like, the more sort of messy and unplanned this is, the better I think they end up looking. All right, the last part of the roses is the highlight, and I actually want the white a little smaller. I feel like it's really dominating this first flower that I'm working on. I tinge some white pink, and I'll probably do the same with the yellow. Um, I just feel like the Q-tip was too big here, so I'm pulling the fuzzy part off, and I'm just going to scratch on those highlights because I just want the highlight to be a little bit here and there. I don't want it to cover the whole entire flower that we've already done. Now make some white dabs, various sizes and shapes. You don't want them to be too um, similar, and we'll just fill that space between. You could put leaves in here, you could use your toothpick and do some scratchy ferns, whatever sounds fun to you to try. All right, now I'm taking my toothpick and I'm going to put some centers in some of these. Again, don't have to do them all. Last but not least, I'll mix some water into my paint, dab off as much water as I can, and do some splatters. I hope you've picked up on some new techniques. I can't say that really any of these are original ideas. They're all things that I've seen on Pinterest and other YouTube channels. I wish I could give everyone credit who I've learned from over the years to find a lot of these ideas. But I hope that by compiling them in one place and making a big mess with you, that you'll try and have some fun with these techniques as well.